the Diocese of Manchester, New Hampshire. The story of the faith in this region began slowly under the cultural and constitutional confines of colonial-era Protestantism, grew rapidly with the influx of French, Canadian, and Irish immigrants employed by the city's burgeoning industry, and carries on today under the leadership of its current apostle, Bishop Peter A. Libasci.
Jesus Christ is the one I talk to. He is my rock, my refuge. He is the stronghold. He is and ought to be and can be for each and every one the same.
This is the story of the bishops of America, the shepherds of the past and the shepherds of today, who through their callings and ministry carry the church into the future. It's also the story of their parish, their church, the Cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be an apostle in America. Straddling the banks of the Merrimack River, surrounded by woods, lakes, and the White Mountains, is the beautiful city of Manchester, New Hampshire. Sea city of the Diocese of Manchester, New Hampshire.
The first Mass to be held in what is now New Hampshire was celebrated by Jesuit missionaries who had accompanied French fighters who came to the region during King William's War. The colony of New Hampshire itself, though, was an inhospitable place for Catholics. For many years, Catholics were denied a right to citizenship, and the first priests did not start traveling to the region until the 1790s, and even then, their visits were few and far between. The Catholics of New Hampshire in those early years were accustomed to living in what's been described as a priestless church.
This begins to change with the assignment of a new priest, a man by the name of Father Virgil Barber. Barber has a very interesting family history in that he is a convert from the Episcopal faith. He was married, and he and his wife had 5 children, but he begins to discern that he has this vocation to the Catholic priesthood. And as he's discerning this, his wife begins to discern a vocation to religious life as well. The two agree to dissolve their marriage. Father Barber becomes a priest, and his wife becomes known as Sister Mary Augustina and enters religious life as a sister.
The Barbers are one of the most interesting families in the history of the Catholic Church in America. 3 years after their separation, on February 23rd, 1820, husband and wife meet again in the chapel of Georgetown Visitation Monastery to make their religious vows. Virgil is a Jesuit, and his wife Joshua is a Visitation nun. So after Father Virgil Barber is ordained a Jesuit priest, he returns to his old home in Claremont, New Hampshire, where in 1823 he builds the first Catholic church in the state, St. Mary's. He worked there for 2 years before spending time on the Indian missions in Maine. By 1848, the Catholic community in Manchester had grown to a stable 300-plus population. Father William MacDonald establishes St. Anne, the first parish church of Manchester. Father MacDonald was a priest in every respect, and his role in building up the faith in the city of Manchester can't be underestimated. In June of 1880, he was succeeded by Father Dennis Mary Bradley, a County Kerry-born Irishman. 4 years later, Bradley would become installed as the first bishop of the Diocese of Manchester, and he chose St. Joseph's as the seat of the new diocese.
The Diocese of Manchester was established in 1884, carved from the Diocese of Portland, Maine. New Hampshire at the time was the last state in New England to have its own diocese. In the first 20 years of the diocese, from 1884 to 1903, the Catholic population more than doubled, from 45,000 to some 100,000 Catholics. During that same period, 34 parishes, 29 elementary schools, and 5 high schools were established in the diocese.
Succeeding Bishop Bradley was John Bernard Delaney. The Delaney only served the diocese for 2 years before his death by appendicitis in June of 1906. He was succeeded by George Girton, born 1907, a native of Nashua, of French-Canadian descent. He stressed the building of parochial schools, and he had to contend with the nationalistic controversies of the 1920s. A segment of the French-Canadian clergy and faithful opposed certain policies of the bishop as being contrary to their national rights and interests, which led to deep divisions among the clergy.
During the late 19th century and early 20th century, the bishops of the Diocese of Manchester faced a number of internal tensions. Many of them were related to the status of the French-Canadian community within the diocese. In many ways, the French Catholic community saw itself in the United States, but not of the United States. That was particularly apparent during the World War I era, when the Catholic Church and the nation as a whole pushed for 100% Americanism. The French-Canadian community resisted those efforts and defended their parishes and schools and other institutions as the bedrock of a separatist, nationalist French-Canadian identity. They bristled against the authority of the local bishops, most of whom were Irish. For their part, though, many French Canadians continued to look for Quebec for guidance and leadership, undercutting the authority of local bishops and their efforts to create a unified American church.
Through the 20th century, the city of Manchester had become a Catholic stronghold. Today, as has been true from the beginning, the mother church and the center of liturgical prayer for the diocese is the Cathedral of St. Joseph. This beautiful church was founded in 1869 to serve the needs of Irish immigrants in the post-Civil War era. Father William MacDonald desired to build a church in which his people could, quote, worship their God in dignity, in comfort, and with a sense of pride. And so he selected the famous Patrick J. Keeley of Brooklyn to design the church building.
The story of the Cathedral of St. Joseph art and architecture is one that is very common among American churches in that it changes over the years pretty dramatically. The historic interior is, like all of Keeley's churches, really considered as a whole. So each element, each artwork, having great integrity of its own and thematically, artistically, theologically related to the other elements in the church. Really fine craftsmanship in the high altar, in the murals, and the murals in the sanctuary related to the life of St. Joseph.
With a sense of dignity in mind, Keeley took inspiration from the grandeur of Gothic architecture. And as he so often did, he designed this church to have a large 170-foot-high bell tower and steeple. In 1892, plans were made to enlarge the building. With this renovation, the current sanctuary was created. Other additions included the sacristy and chapel. New stained glass windows were also added.
The windows throughout the cathedral are beautiful. They're from Innsbruck. And if you look around, you'll see they're very intricate and have beautiful scenes of the life of Christ and also other devotional scenes in the life of the church. But in particular, the sanctuary windows, the center one is, of course, the crucifixion. That one is in the center, right above the altar. The cathedral is smack dab in the middle of Manchester. We're only a few streets from downtown Manchester, which makes us an inner city parish. A lot of our parishioners don't live near the cathedral as they would have many years ago when it was built and for years following that. And so it's a parish that is chosen by its parishioners, and we're pretty much a visible presence in the center of the city. Sure, we have an outreach to those who are in need, but we think of ourselves as being a presence of Christ here in the city of Manchester. We're one of the churches that keeps its doors open every single day, so people can come and pray as you would want them to in any church, but particularly in a cathedral. People can see the cathedral from quite a distance, And hopefully they see it as a place of hope and a place of refuge where they can come and meet the Lord. Our bells ring quite a few times throughout the day, and I've been up to the bell tower before, and they're quite enormous and weigh thousands and thousands of pounds. And they were dedicated in 1902. And some people know bells are blessed with holy water, but also consecrated with chrism oil, so they're initiated. And so as they ring, they certainly bring attention to the cathedral.
The diocese began another renovation in 2014 to restore and beautify the cathedral for future generations.
So one of the first things that we did to commence the restoration of the cathedral was to restore the cathedral to its original place, from the center, where it was moved after the Second Vatican Council, back to the wall, where it looks as much part of the cathedral, like it's built into the wall of the cathedral. And from there, the bishop presides at Mass and liturgies. It's very visible when we have ordinations and confirmations. Following the restoration of the cathedra, we did restore the roof of the cathedral. In addition to the roof, we were able to restore the slate on the steeple, which rises about 170 feet into the air. And on top of the steeple is a beautiful gilded cross that I had the pleasure of climbing and being able to place it there after its restoration. So that was sort of the pinnacle of that restoration.
In a providential twist, the Cathedral of St. Joseph now has a Keeley high altar back in the sanctuary. So this was a reredos created by Patrick Keeley for Boston's Holy Trinity Church, which was gifted to St. Patrick's, and one that Keeley himself actually worked on. So while not intended historically and originally for this building, it has a great relationship to the tradition in which St. Joseph's was created.
In addition to restoring the high altar, we're able to do some painting. The ceiling is a beautiful sky blue. We painted the transept of the cathedral, and the first four columns, the Corinthian columns, were marbleized, as well as other accents in the sanctuary area. So that was, again, another part of a long history of restoration in the cathedral.
People are just so proud of what's happening here. Father Jason has done so very, very much. So you see all of these things. This is all within the last, several months. But what really draws so much, not only this, but the music ministry, the choir. We're here, we have many, many musicians, people who've studied and who have trained voices, who come here to be part of the choir. So it's a magnificent music that's been developed over the years before I got here. And when I celebrated Mass here for the first time, I said, I can't believe how beautiful this all is. Young families are coming from all over, not just from the area, but they say, we want our children to experience this. We want to experience this. And consequently, there's a great, great interest, and the atmosphere here is a rebirth.
The chair in St. Joseph's Cathedral symbolizes Bishop Libasci's authority as the Apostle of Manchester. Peter Anthony Libasci was born November 9, 1951, in Queens, New York. He attended St. Margaret's School in Middle Village, New York, followed by Cathedral Preparatory Seminary in Elmhurst, New York.
I'm one of 5 children, and we lived in my grandparents' apartment, and 5 rooms and 7 of us. And when Grandma and Grandpa would be with us, it was 9 people sharing in 1 bathroom. So it was very interesting who slept in the dining room, who slept in the living room, and who slept in the 2 bedrooms. It was quite a situation. The area, very blue collar, mostly civil service employees. Our grammar school at the time, we had almost 1,000 children. Back in the day, most of the places, there was always that sense of generation after generation in the same Catholic school.
Libasci earned a bachelor's degree in philosophy from St. John's University. and a Master of Divinity degree from St. Meinrad Seminary in St. Meinrad, Indiana.
While I was in St. John's, I said, I really think I want to continue to investigate priesthood. I asked the priest in my parish at the time, what I should do. He hooked me up, as they say, with the vocation director. So I was going down to Tillery Street at 7 o'clock at night to go in to see Father. And the very first visit I made, oh, it's so good, you want to be a priest? You're thinking about priesthood? Yeah, sure. Well, where would you like to study? So I began to say, music, liturgical art, history, this, that. Oh, well, then St. Meinrad is the place for you. So I was intrigued. We got there on a Sunday afternoon. I will never forget it. I will never forget it. Just being overwhelmed by the experience. And then at a certain point, walking around what they call the hill, I was over the farm that they had at the time and all of this sort of stuff. And I just looked and I said, I have to be here.
Father Libasci was ordained a priest of the Diocese of Rockville Centre on April 1, 1978, by Bishop John R. McGann. After 10 years of ministry, he eventually was named pastor of Our Lady of Good Counsel Parish.
I was a little bit younger than usual. I was only ordained about 10 years. The parish that I went to was a small community, mostly Italian Americans. It was going through a difficult time, aging out and things that perhaps needed attention. I said, well, this is something I would like to try, just for a couple of years. I had come from a parish that was very, very large, and I said, in 2 years, I'll go back to something big, but let me go with this. And I was there for 10 years as pastor and enjoyed it very, very, very much. We saw great times of the young families and the people, growing up who had been there for generations, just like where I had come from, now seeing their history being not only appreciated, but developing. So it worked out pretty well.
On April 3, 2007, His Holiness Pope Benedict XVI appointed Monsignor Libasci Auxiliary Bishop of the Diocese of Rockville Centre.
At this point, I was out in Montauk Point, Long Island. I was pastor out there. The bishop, Bishop Murphy, he had called me up. He says, oh, Peter, are you going to be coming into Huntington to go to that lecture that so-and-so is giving? I says, oh, well, I've got a wedding and this and that. So, oh, well, after the wedding, come on in, which was like an hour and a half to 2 hour drive. So I finished the wedding and got in the car and started driving. The lecture was still going on, and I was waiting in an ante-room. And as they were finishing up, I stepped out, and they were all coming out. And there was Bishop, oh, Peter, you made it. Here, come on. He says, okay, here. And then he says to me, hey, are you feeling generous? Bishop, what can I do for you? I do what I can. Are you feeling generous to the church? Yeah, well, I don't know what I could possibly do, but what? Well, the Holy Father has named you Auxiliary Bishop of the diocese. Do you accept? And I started to pray, and I said, oh my God, this is not good. It took me walking back and forth, and this, that, and the other, and I said, I don't know what I can do about this. If this is the Holy Spirit, if this is what it is, I don't understand it. I will say yes, but I just don't know. Okay, that's fine. So then the bishop told me, he called the nuncio, and he said, the bishop started to recount the whole scene of what it was like, my backing for, well, did he accept? Yes. Oh, good.
After years of ministry in the Diocese of Rockville Centre as a priest, pastor, and bishop, His Holiness Pope Benedict XVI appointed Libasci as the 10th Bishop of Manchester on September 19, 2011.
The transition was two completely different cultures. New England, they explained to me, well, this is how we are in New England. And I said, yeah, well, this is how we are in New York. It is, to a certain degree, what a missionary must go through, to learn the culture, to abandon a culture, to be able to put aside, and that is a very, very, very difficult, and I think it is, for a missionary, I speak about it all the time, how they must give up language, food, home, all of these things. Well, it's a lot easier to do it when you're just going, 4 hours away. Nevertheless, one must be mindful, and that's been a constant, that I have to remember, I have to remember, I have to remember. Because they're always asking me, are you a Yankees fan or a Boston Red Sox fan? That must be the litmus test, you know.
In the years since becoming bishop, Bishop Libasci has strived to live out his apostolic mission to govern, to teach, and to sanctify his people. At the heart of his ministry is a deep friendship with the person of Jesus Christ.
I remember one day I had these two icons, Blessed Mother and Jesus, that were given to me by a friend almost 50 years ago. And I had them set up in a temporary little chapel. And I was in a hurry, and I ran past, and I says, I'll come back later. You don't mind, do you? Talking to Jesus manifested through the icon. And I started to laugh. I said, oh my God, how do you talk to the Lord like that? It was uninhibited. It was unprepared. It was of the moment of the spirit of the, I really want to pray, but I don't have time right now. I got to run. And I did come back. And to that day, I still keep coming back in that image saying, I want to be with you. I want to be with you. We had our Chrism Mass last evening. The day before, I made a holy hour with the Blessed Sacrament in my own chapel and just said, I really don't want to talk to you, Lord. I just want to listen to you. He is my rock, my refuge. He is the stronghold. He is teacher. He's patient. Without him, there's nothing. The Blessed Mother, I talk to her, I need her, but that's her son. Every mother wants to know that their son has a good friend. That's who Jesus is to me. And if it's for me, he is and ought to be and can be for each and every one the same.